Mexican art, the colonial period. The Spaniards renamed Tenochtitlan Mexico City and rebuilt it as the capital of Nueva España. Cortés granted his orders encomiendas, which granted an entire town and its Indian population to an encomendero as the treasure hoped for after the conquest. The Aztecs did not amount to much, as much of it had been lost in the retreat of Noche Triste. Cortés and his men fled the Aztec capital during La Noche Triste. The banner of Cortés. With the Spanish conquest, the arts of Europe came to Mexico, first Gothic forms, then Baroque and Ultra-Baroque, Franciscan and Augustinian monks, with the help of local Indians, built churches and monasteries throughout the country. The baptism of Indians began with the march of Cortés. The hand of God was been in the discovery of Mexico, a gift from God from freeing Spain from the Muslims, who were still viewed as a menace. The person ultimately responsible for all the souls in the New World was Charles V, King of Mexico and the Holy Roman Emperor. Charles V took this charge seriously and was concerned for the physical and spiritual welfare of the Indians. Huilapan. The friars spread out in the country, often being the first Europeans to explore an area. They built fortress missions across the New Spain. 9 million were baptized by 1537. For some friars, it was not unusual to baptize 4,000 Indians a day. The friars needed churches for all these new Christians, and a uniquely Mexican architectural form was created to accommodate this large number of new converts. This was the open chapel of Capilla Abierta, which were covered over in time to create religious complexes such as the one at Huilapan. By 1540, 50 such churches had been built. The influence of the Indian artisan can be seen in the elaborate altar pieces and wall ceiling of churches, which overflow with detail as temples were in the pre-conquest area. The Virgin of Guadalupe. Why was Mexico so quickly converted? There were some similarities that made conversion easier, such as the cross, which was a symbol for God of rain in Mesoamerica, and the crucifixion of Christ as a symbol for sacrifice needed for rebirth. The Catholic reverence for saints, with their holiday and elaborate religious processions, were similar to Mesoamerican practices. The country's patron saint is the Virgin of Guadalupe, who made her appearance to Juan Diego on the site of an Aztec shrine of the Aztec goddess, Tonantzin in 1531 on a hill outside of Mexico City. She was officially declared the patron saint of Mexico after she stopped an outbreak of plague in the city in 1737. Her shrine there attracts thousands of pilgrims daily. Many anthropologists say she represents a synthetic of Catholic and pre-Columbian beliefs. Colonial architecture. The Spanish divided a huge area under their control in North, South, and Central America into 5 viceroyalties. The architectural style differed in the viceroyalties depending on local conditions, and there was no homogeneous style running throughout the empire. Baroque art in Mexico City and Cusco, for example, are not the same. The stone carving at the convent of Tlalmanalco showing a fusion of Spanish and Indian styles. In building, the Spanish used the Indians as their labor source, who infused native motifs and styles on the buildings. A good example of that can be seen at the convent of Tlalmanalco. Colonial Mexico. The intriguing colonial heritage of Mexico is profiled in this detailed and informative guide. Chiqui Mayan leads readers through cities such as San Miguel de Allende, Mérida, and Veracruz, revealing 500 years old churches, Spanish haciendas, and imposing palaces and style in regarding from neoclassical to modern art. Casa de Montejo. 1549, Plateresque style. Spaniards tried to recreate the styles of Spain in Mexico, but was modified by the new land. Churches gained a fortress appearance because of the Indian attacks. Thick walls were needed because of earthquakes. The building material in New Spain was more colorful. The red tezontle, pumice, and polychrome. Tiles from Puebla became widely used. Such convents as Huejotzingo, Acolman, and Actopan show this fortress-like style. Convent at Huejotzingo. Grandeur of Viceregal Mexico. This landmark publication features extraordinary decorative and fine arts from the Mexican Viceregal period, 1521 to 1841. The lavishly illustrated catalog is written in Spanish and English. Capilla Real. In the early buildings were built along Gothic, Mudéjar, Moorish, and Romanesque lines. The Moorish style can be seen in the interior and domes of the Capilla Real in Cholula. In the mid-16th century, the influence of the Spanish Renaissance began to be felt, and a style known as Plateresque silversmith with intricate platswork began to be seen. The Church of Santa Prisca in Taxco, built in the late 18th century, considered one of the best examples of the Mexican Baroque style. In the 17th century, the Silver World of New Spain helped finance large mansions and cathedrals. The two largest cathedrals were built in Mexico City in 1563 and Puebla in 1575. The Puebla Cathedral is famous for its tile-covered dome. Dome of the Puebla Cathedral. The Indians of the area were skilled in ceramic before the arrival of the Spanish, and the Spanish introduced talavera ware, a thin enameled ceramic chiefly in blue, white, and yellow. The tile-covered dome mark of the Mexican colonial style. The Churrigueresque style cathedral in the silver town of Zacatecas. Side Chapel, Church of Santa Prisca, Taxco, 1748, Diego Durán Berruecos. In the 17th century, a more distinctively Mexican style emerged, the ultra-baroque Churrigueresque style. It reflected some of the exuberance of the newly rich criollos of the times, especially the super-rich silver barons, who built such churches as the Aztecs Cathedral and the Santiago Tlatelolco in Mexico City. The sculptures of many of these incredibly integrated facades, altars, and other adornments so distinctive of Mexican architecture were unknown Indians and mestizos. As a reaction to the excess, a more severe neoclassical style became dominant. From about 1780 to 1830, an example is the Palacio de Minería in Mexico City. Baroque art reached its max in the 18th century, which was followed by the neoclassical style, which continued through the years of the War of Independence and the First Empire as a reaction to the old Baroque style of the colonial past, and was seen as being more cosmopolitan and modern. The government of General Santa Anna made plans to modernize the country, and European masters such as the Pellegrin Clay and Roque and Eugenio Landesio were invited to teach in Mexico. Painting in the colonial period. The painting of the colonial period was mainly religious in nature. A heavily Spanish influence in the later colonial period portrayed painting among the rich grew in popularity. One of the first murals in Mexico depicting the revolt of Franciscans in 1544 at the convent of Huejotzingo, Puebla, 16th century. Indian learning how to paint in the European method at the church school, 1540. Codex Florentino. Painting advanced in Mexico with the coming of the Flemish master Simon Perrins in 1560, who taught many local artists. Miguel Cabrera, 1695 to 1768, was an indigenous Zapotec. Made paintings depicting the various classes and one of the best graded painters in all of the New Spain. In 1753, he founded Mexico's first Academy of Painting and served as its Perpetual President. A Mestizo Baby by Miguel Cabrera. What was essential associate caste system and enforced by law? At the top was the wild ruling class, which made up 1 million out of the population by the end of the colonial period. At the top of this group were the Spanish from Spain, Peninsulares, most of these returned to Spain. Below them were the Spanish born in Mexico, the criollos. The criollos could not hold royal office, only whites were allowed to wear the fine silk clothes, be called gentlemen, caraballeros, and ladies, damas. Lithograph by Carlos Neva, mulatto woman making tortillas. Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, one of the most famous literary stars of the colonial period by Miguel Cabrera, 1750. Another important artist of the period was Juan Rodríguez Juárez, 1675 to 1728, who painted in the style of Murillo. Worked by Juan Rodríguez Juárez. The Incredulity of Saint Thomas, 1643, Sebastián López de Arteaga, painting during the golden age of colonial painting in Mexico. Artist trained in Seville and came to Mexico around 1640. He is largely responsible for importing the current 17th century. Many painters of this period were agents, such as Arteaga were agents of the Inquisition. The decoration of the Maggie Baltasar de Echevarri Rioja, in the Baroque style of colonial Mexico. Tree of Life, Cristobal Villalpando, 1649, another famous painter of the Mexican Baroque period. A retablo. In the colonial period, such folk art styles as this retablo became popular. Colonial ceramics. Talavera ceramics. Glass pottery was brought to Mexico from the Talavera de la Reina, Spain in the 16th century. Many people consider Puebla, Mexico, the home of Mexican Talavera because of the first regulations and standards for determining the uniformity and excellence of the traditional Mexican Talavera. Talavera is characterized by bright colors and floral designs because of the extensive imports from China to Mexico on the galleons. Chinese ceramic was soon imitated, particularly their designs. Thank you so much for your attention.